Professor Kilnex had been teaching xenoarchaeology for 600 cycles, and in all that time, nobody had ever interrupted his lectures. Not once. The students of the Galactic Institute knew better. You sat, you listened, you took notes on your neural tablets, and you absolutely did not question the foremost expert on extinct species in the entire Andromeda sector. So when the human girl raised her hand halfway through his presentation on the Forgotten Ones, Kilnex actually stopped mid-sentence. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence. Left, center, right. Like shutters on malfunctioning cameras. Yes? He asked, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for small creatures who had just made terrible decisions. The human, her name badge reading Maya Torres, stood up. She had dark hair pulled into something humans called a ponytail, and she wore the standard student uniform that somehow looked perpetually wrinkled on her species, her brown eyes fixed on the holographic projection floating above Kilnex's podium. Professor, I have a question about slide 47. Kilnex's tail twitched. His species, the Relians, only exhibited tail twitching when profoundly annoyed or about to molt. He wasn't molting. Slide 47 is a reconstruction of the Forgotten Ones University graduation ceremony. What could you possibly need clarifying? The data is from archaeological sites spanning 300 planets. Maya walked down the aisle, her shoes making those peculiar squeaking sounds on the polished floor. Every one of the 200 students turned to watch. Some of them were species that didn't even have heads, and they somehow still managed to convey the impression of staring. That's me, Maya said, pointing at the hologram. The lecture hall went silent, not the respectful silence that usually accompanied Kilnex's teachings, but the kind of silence that happens right before something explodes or the universe divides by zero. Kilnex's middle eye focused on the hologram while his other 2 eyes remained fixed on Maya. The image showed a bipedal figure in ceremonial robes, holding what appeared to be a documentation cylinder. The figure had 2 arms, 2 legs, forward-facing eyes, and that distinctive patch of fur on top of its head that humans seem so proud of. This is not you, Kilnex said slowly, as if explaining basic physics to a particularly dim asteroid. The civilization died out approximately 50,000 years ago. You are at most 20 of your Earth years old. 22 actually, Maya corrected, and that's literally my graduation photo from Berkeley. I graduated 3 years ago with a degree in anthropology. I remember that day because it rained, and my mom wouldn't stop crying, and my little brother kept making faces during the ceremony. A student in the back, a Chlorvian with excellent hearing despite having no visible ears, let out a sound that his species used for expressing amused disbelief. Several others joined in with their own versions of laughter. The tentacled ones from Sigma Octantis made bubbling noises. The silicon-based fragments produced sounds like wind chimes in a hurricane. Kilnex, however, was not laughing. His claws extended slightly, scraping against the podium. Miss Torres, I understand that humans have a peculiar sense of humor, but this is a serious academic institution. The Forgotten Ones vanished millennia before your species even developed written language. Maya pulled out her personal datapad. Can you display this on the main screen? Absolutely not. Please. It'll just take a second. Something in her tone made Kilnex pause. It wasn't defiance exactly. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that came from knowing something so fundamental that arguing about it seemed pointless. Against his better judgment, he activated the screen-sharing protocol. Maya's photo appeared on the massive holographic display. It showed her in a black robe and that ridiculous flat hat with a tassel, holding a rolled-up document. Behind her stood a building with columns, and above her hung a banner reading UC Berkeley Class of 20. Kilnex pulled up his slide 47. The 2 images appeared side by side. They were identical. Not similar, not close. Identical. The same pose, the same angle, the same building in the background. The only difference was that the archaeological reconstruction had worse resolution and some color degradation from 50,000 years of data decay. The lecture hall erupted into chaos. Students began talking over each other in 17 different languages and communication methods. One of the crystalline students accidentally released a frequency that made everyone's teeth hurt. Someone in the back knocked over their chemical nutrient solution. Order, Kilnex bellowed. Order. The noise died down to a low murmur. Kilnex's mind raced through possibilities. Hoax? No. The archaeological data had been verified by dozens of independent teams across multiple decades. Coincidence? The probability was so small it didn't merit consideration. Time travel? Unlikely. The temporal physics were all wrong. Humans hadn't mastered time travel yet, and if they had, he would have known about it because the paperwork alone would have been visible from orbit. How? He asked, forcing his voice to remain steady. Did a photo of you end up in ruins that predate your civilization by 47,000 years? That's what I'd like to know, Maya said. Can we look at the other slides? Kilnex cycled through his presentation. Slide 12 showed what he'd labeled as domestic habitation architecture. It depicted a dwelling structure with a triangular roof, rectangular windows, and a paved area in front containing a mobile transport vehicle. That's my house, Maya said. Well, my parents' house. In Sacramento. That's my dad's car in the driveway. Slide 19. Recreational gathering space. A large field with white marking lines and rectangular goals at either end. That's the soccer field where I played in high school. I scored the winning goal in the championship there during my junior year. Slide 23. Nutrition preparation area. That's literally a Starbucks. I worked there during summer break. That burn mark on the counter is from when Marcus tried to steam milk and forgot to purge the wand first. With each identification, the classroom grew quieter. Students leaned forward. Some were recording everything on their neural implants. One of them had already started live streaming to the entire institute. Kilnex could see the viewer count climbing in his peripheral vision. 3,000, 10,000, 50,000. This is impossible, Kilnex said, but his voice lacked conviction. He'd spent his entire career studying the impossible and making it possible. The Forgotten Ones were documented across hundreds of worlds. The evidence is incontrovertible. Can I see all the artifacts you've collected? Maya asked. Kilnex wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed that this was a mistake, that he should shut down the lecture, file a report with the academic board, and let someone else handle whatever madness was unfolding. But he'd spent 6 centuries building a reputation on intellectual courage and scientific integrity. He wasn't about to abandon that now because a human undergraduate was making him uncomfortable. Follow me, he said. The walk to the xenoarchaeology vault took them through 3 security checkpoints, and down 4 levels. Maya followed, and somehow the entire class followed behind her. Then students from other classes, then professors, then maintenance staff. By the time they reached the vault, there were at least 300 beings trailing behind them like the universe's strangest parade. The vault doors opened with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, rows of preservation fields held artifacts from the Forgotten Ones. Kilnex had spent decades collecting them, cataloging them, piecing together the story of a civilization that had spread across the stars and then vanished without explanation. Maya walked slowly down the first aisle. Her hand came up to her mouth. Oh no, she whispered. What? She pointed to a preservation field containing what appeared to be a ceremonial garment. That's my freshman year hoodie. I lost it during spring break in Cancun. I thought someone stole it from the beach. Next case. My laptop. I spilled coffee on it during finals week senior year. Next case. My mom's cookbook. She's been looking for that for ages. Next case. My little brother's action figures. He kept them on his dresser. Next case. My diary from 8th grade. Oh God, please tell me you haven't read that. Kilnex felt something he'd never experienced before. Not fear. Exactly. More like the sensation of standing on solid ground, only to realize it was actually the back of a sleeping creature that was starting to wake up. How is your personal property scattered across 300 planets in ruins that are 50,000 years old? I don't know, Maya's voice cracked. You're the expert. You tell me. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Kilnex checked his neural interface. It was from the Institute director, marked urgent. The message contained 3 words. My office. Nah. The director's office occupied the top floor of the Institute's central tower. Director Vexara was a luminarian, a species of pure energy contained in a magnetic field that vaguely resembled a pillar of light. She didn't do upset so much as she did different wavelengths of irritated. Currently, she was emanating in the ultraviolet range, which meant she was furious. Explain, Vexara said. The word seemed to come from everywhere at once. Kilnex explained. Maya added details. The 300 witnesses who had somehow crammed into the office added their own observations. By the end, Vexari was cycling through colors that didn't have names in most languages. Let me see if I understand, Vexara said. We have spent 300 years studying the Forgotten Ones. We have published thousands of papers. We have built museums. We have established an entire academic discipline. And now you're telling me that the Forgotten Ones are actually humans, specifically this human's personal belongings, somehow distributed across space and time. That's what the evidence suggests, Kilnex said. The evidence is insane. Yes, Director. Vex's aura dimmed for a moment. The equivalent of pinching a bridge of a nose she didn't have. Do you know how many careers depend on Forgotten One's research? Do you know how much funding is tied to these sites? Do you have any idea what this will do to the academic community? I'm more concerned about what it means for reality, Kilnex said. If Maya's belongings are 50,000 years old, but she's only 22 years old, we have a serious causality problem. Maya raised her hand. Can I say something? Please, Vexura said. At this point you might be the only one who has any idea what's happening. I don't have any idea what's happening, Maya admitted, but I think we need to check something. Professor Kilnex, in your research, did the Forgotten Ones leave any messages? Any writing? Anything that might explain what happened to them? Kilnex nodded slowly. There's one artifact. We've never been able to translate it. The language doesn't match any known linguistic pattern. We've had the best cryptographers in the galaxy working on it for decades. Can I see it? 5 minutes later they stood in front of a preservation field containing a small metallic plate. On it was engraved a message in symbols that had defied translation for as long as Kilnex had been studying the Forgotten Ones. Maya stared at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she started laughing. Not polite laughter. Not nervous laughter. The kind of laughter that suggested someone had just realized the universe was playing a very elaborate joke. What? Kilnex demanded. What does it say? Maya wiped tears from her eyes. It says, if you find this, call Maya Torres at 550147. This is all a misunderstanding. That's your phone number? That was my phone number. In college. Before I changed carriers. Vexeter pulsed in a color that might have been the luminarian equivalent of a migraine. Miss Torres, are you telling me that you somehow knew you would need to leave yourself a message 50,000 years in the past? No, Maya said. I'm telling you that I have no idea what's going on. But apparently at some point in my future, past me figured it out and decided to leave a note. Which is very considerate of past me except for the part where the message is completely useless because that phone number doesn't work anymore. There's a second line, Kilnex said, peering closer. Below the message, Maya looked. The symbols shifted, rearranged themselves, and suddenly became clear. It says, check your email. I sent you something important. Also, don't eat the cafeteria sushi on Thursday. Trust me. Kilnex watched as Maya pulled out her datapad and checked her email. He watched her face go through several expressions: confusion, shock, understanding, and finally a kind of resigned acceptance that suggested she'd just received news that made everything simultaneously better and worse. So, Vexara said carefully, what does the email say? Maya looked up. Her expression was the kind that people wear when they've just realized they're the protagonist of a story they didn't want to be in. It's complicated, she said. But the short version is, I'm going to need to borrow your time dilation lab, a quantum entanglement communicator, and probably about 600,000 credits for equipment. Why? Kilnex asked. Because apparently at some point in the next few years I'm going to accidentally create a temporal loop that scatters my college belongings across space and time. And according to future me, if I don't fix it, something much worse happens. What could be worse than this? Maya showed them the email. The final line read, if you don't fix this, the loop collapses and takes Earth with it. Humanity never exists. You have 3 weeks. Good luck. P.S. You're going to need to convince Professor Kilnex to help. He's stubborn, but he means well. P.S. His middle eye twitches when he's lying. All 3 of Kilnex's eyes turned to Maya. He'd been about to say this was impossible, that he couldn't possibly help, that there were procedures and protocols. But his middle eye had already started twitching. Fine, he said. But if we're going to break causality and possibly destroy the academic careers of everyone in the Institute, we're doing it properly, with documentation and peer review. Deal, Maya said. Though I should warn you, according to this email, things are gonna get weird. Kilnex looked around his office. At the director made of light. At the human holding an email from herself sent from 50,000 years ago. At the 300 witnesses still crowded in the doorway. At his life's work, which had just been revealed to be a college student's lost property. Weird, he said flatly. Yes, I can see how things might get weird. The time dilation lab looked like someone had taken a physics equation, made it 3-dimensional, and then let it have a nervous breakdown. Spinning rings of exotic matter orbited a central platform, cables thick as tree trunks connected to power generators that hummed with enough energy to run a small moon. And in the center of it all stood Maya Torres, reading instructions from an email she'd sent herself from 50,000 years in the past. "This is monumentally stupid," Kilnek said. He'd been saying variations of this for the past 3 days while they prepared the equipment. His tail hadn't stopped twitching since they'd started. "You've mentioned that," Maya replied, adjusting a temporal flux calibrator. "Roughly 473 times by my count. I want it on record that I am participating under extreme duress." "Noted." Maya checked another readout. "Also on record, you're the one who requisitioned the extra power cells and personally recalibrated the quantum entanglement array. For someone under duress, you're being very helpful." Kilnex's claws clicked against his datapad. He didn't have a response to that because she was right. Despite every logical objection, despite the complete impossibility of what they were attempting, some part of him was thrilling at the challenge. 600 years of careful, methodical archaeology, and here he was about to potentially unravel the greatest mystery of his career by helping a human fix her cosmic mistake. "The calculations from your future self are remarkable," he admitted. "I've never seen temporal mathematics expressed quite like this. There are elements here that won't be discovered for another century according to current theoretical projections." "Yeah. Future me apparently gets really good at math," Maya said. "Present me barely passed calculus. I'm hoping this is one of those you-learn-as-you-go situations." Vexara materialized in the lab entrance, pulsing an anxious yellow. "The Institute board is demanding updates. They want to know why we've shut down 3 academic departments and redirected enough power to light up the entire campus for a year. Tell them we're preventing the temporal erasure of an entire species," Maya said. "I did tell them that. They asked if I was having a breakdown." "Are you?" Vexara flickered. "I'm a being of pure energy. I don't have traditional breakdowns, but if I did, this would absolutely qualify." A chime sounded from the central console. Kilnex checked the readings. "The temporal field is stable. We're ready to begin whenever you are." Maya took a deep breath. According to her future self's instructions, the problem had started during her graduate research. She'd been studying quantum archaeology, a theoretical field that most scientists dismissed as fantasy. The idea was that information could be retrieved from the past using quantum entanglement principles. Maya had apparently succeeded, but in doing so she'd created a feedback loop that had scattered her physical belongings across time and space. "So let me make sure I understand this correctly," Kilnek said, reviewing the procedure one final time. "You're going to use the time dilation field to connect to the moment when you originally created the temporal anomaly. Then you're going to quantum entangle your present consciousness with your past consciousness. Then you're going to convince past you not to make the mistake that created this entire mess." "That's the plan," Maya confirmed. "There are approximately 9,000 things that could go wrong with this. Future me thought of that. There's a contingency list." Maya pulled up another section of the email. "It's 73 pages long. That does not make me feel better." "It shouldn't," Maya said cheerfully. "But we're doing it anyway because the alternative is that Earth never exists and humanity gets erased from the timeline. No pressure." She stepped onto the central platform. The rings began to spin faster, creating a sound like reality being unzipped. Kilnex monitored the readings from his station. Temporal coordinates locked. Quantum entanglement established. Energy levels approaching critical threshold. Beginning consciousness transfer in 3, 2. The lab disappeared. Maya found herself standing in a smaller, shabbier laboratory. Earth-style fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The equipment looked primitive compared to the Galactic Institute's technology. Posters on the walls advertised something called Physics Department Pizza Friday, and sitting at a workstation staring at a computer screen with the intensity of someone who had no idea they were about to break the universe, was Maya from 3 years ago. Past Maya looked tired. Her hair was messier. She wore sweatpants with a hole in the knee and a t-shirt that said Schrodinger's cat is dead, and alive, and judging you. She was muttering to herself while typing equation. "This is so weird," present Maya whispered. Then she remembered she was technically a quantum projection and past Maya couldn't hear her unless she made the connection. She reached out mentally following the instructions from future Maya. The sensation was like trying to remember a dream while still dreaming it. There was resistance at first, then suddenly she was inside past Maya's head, seeing through her eyes, feeling her exhaustion and excitement. Past Maya suddenly froze. "What the?" "Don't freak out," present Maya said, her thoughts overlaying past Maya's consciousness. "This is going to sound insane, but you're me from 3 years in the future." "Well, technically I'm you from 3 years in the future. Grammar gets weird with time travel." Past Maya's hands hovered over the keyboard. I'm having a stress hallucination. I knew I shouldn't have had 3 energy drinks. You're not hallucinating. In about 30 seconds you're going to press enter and run that quantum archaeology program you've been working on. Don't do it, but I'm so close. If this works, it'll prove that quantum information retrieval is possible. It'll revolutionize archaeology. It'll do that and more. Specifically, it'll scatter all your belongings across 300 planets over the course of 50,000 years, and create a temporal paradox that threatens Earth's existence. Past Maya laughed. That's ridiculous. The program just retrieves quantum information. It doesn't physically transport objects through time. That's what you think. But there's a harmonic resonance issue with the entanglement frequency. When you run the program, it creates a feedback loop. The quantum observation collapses not just information but physical matter. Everything in your apartment that's quantum entangled with your consciousness, which turns out to be basically everything you own because you've touched it, gets scattered across space-time. That's impossible. So is talking to yourself from the future, yet here we are. Past Maya stared at the screen. Her finger hovered over the enter key. If I don't run this program, I don't finish my thesis. If I don't finish my thesis, I don't graduate. If I don't graduate, I don't get into the Institute's exchange program. If I don't get into the exchange program, I never meet Professor Kilnex. If I never meet Kilnex, the timeline collapses. Present Maya finished. I know, future me explained it in the email. It's a closed causal loop. You have to run the program for me to exist in the future to come back and stop you. But you also can't run the program or Earth gets erased. That's a paradox. Welcome to my last 3 days. Past Maya pulled her hands away from the keyboard. Okay, say I believe you, which I'm not sure I do. What am I supposed to do instead? You run the program, but with modifications. Future me sent back the corrected equations. The harmonic resonance can be dampened if you adjust the entanglement frequency by 0.003%. It's such a small change that you'd never notice it. But it prevents the feedback loop. How do I know this isn't just my subconscious trying to sabotage my thesis? Because your subconscious doesn't know that you're going to spill coffee on your laptop during finals week, lose your hoodie in Cancun, or that Marcus burns the counter at Starbucks during your summer shift. But I do, because I lived it. And 50,000 years from now, Professor Kilnex is going to find all of it in archaeological sites across the galaxy and build an entire career studying the Forgotten Ones, who are actually just you, and it's going to be the most embarrassing thing that ever happens to anyone in the history of space-time. Past Maya sat very still. Marcus burns the counter next Tuesday. He forgets to purge the steam wand. Okay? Past Maya took a shaky breath. Okay? What are the corrections? Present Maya fed the information through their shared consciousness. Past Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard, adjusting equations, modifying parameters. The changes were tiny, almost invisible, but they would prevent the catastrophe that created the Forgotten Ones. Done, Past Maya said. If I run this now, you finish your thesis, graduate, get into the exchange program, meet Kilnex, and eventually learn enough temporal physics to send yourself an email from 50,000 years in the past to fix this mess. The loop closes properly, and nobody gets erased from existence. Nobody gets erased from existence. Past Maya's finger moved toward the enter key again. Then she paused. Wait, if I fix this, then the Forgotten Ones never exist. Which means Professor Kilnex never studies them. Which means his entire career is different. Won't that change things? Present Maya felt the quantum connection starting to destabilize. She didn't have much time left. Future me thought of that. There's a note in the email about it. Kilnex doesn't lose his career. He just redirects it. Turns out there are plenty of other extinct civilizations to study, and he ends up making an even bigger discovery because he's not fixated on the Forgotten Ones. What discovery? Can't tell you. Spoilers. Also, the quantum connection is collapsing and I need to get back to my own time before I get stuck here. One more question, Past Maya said quickly. Do things get better? After all this, Present Maya smiled. You get to study on an alien space station, work with species most humans have never heard of, and accidentally solve one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. Your mom still cries at inappropriate times, and your brother still makes faces during important events. But things get better. Things get weird, but better. Good enough for me. Past Maya pressed enter. The program ran, numbers scrolled across the screen, and this time, nothing disappeared. No temporal anomaly. No scattered belongings. Just clean data proving that quantum archaeological retrieval was possible. The connection snapped. Present Maya felt herself pulled backward through time, through the spinning sensation of consciousness relocating to the proper moment. She opened her eyes in the Galactic Institute's time dilation lab. Kilnex was staring at his instruments with all three eyes wide. "It worked," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "The timeline is rewriting itself. I can see the changes propagating through the temporal field." Vexari pulsed a brilliant white. "The archaeological sites are updating in the database. The Forgotten Ones artifacts they're changing, becoming something else." Maya stepped off the platform, stumbling slightly. Kilnex caught her with a steadying claw. "Easy. Consciousness transfer takes a toll." "Did it work?" Maya asked. "Is Earth still there?" Kilnex checked his long-range sensors. "Earth is still there. Humanity still exists. You still exist. But the Forgotten Ones." He trailed off, looking at his datapad with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. "What? What happened to them?" "They're not forgotten anymore," Kilnex said slowly. "The artifacts are still there, but they're different. They belong to a civilization called the Architects. They actually did live 50,000 years ago. They were a spacefaring species that built incredible structures across hundreds of worlds before vanishing mysteriously. So you still have extinct aliens to study. Better ones, apparently." Kilnex's tail was twitching again, but this time with excitement rather than annoyance. "According to this updated data, the Architects left behind functional technology, stargates, faster than light engines, power sources we've never seen before. This is the discovery of the millennium." Vexara brightened to a pleased gold. "So Miss Torres saves Earth and accidentally gives Professor Kilnex an even better research project. I'd call that a successful resolution." Maya laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "I fixed a time paradox I accidentally created by going back in time to stop myself from creating it, and the universe just found something else to fill the gap." "Reality abhors a vacuum," Kilnex said. "When you remove the Forgotten Ones from the timeline, the universe compensated by revealing something that was already there but hidden. The Architects were always there. We just couldn't see them because we were too focused on your lost luggage." "That's actually kind of beautiful," Maya said, in a weird, temporally paradoxical way. "Speaking of paradoxes," Vexari said, "what happens to you now, Miss Torres? If you never created the temporal anomaly, why do you remember fixing it?" Maya felt her pockets. Her datapad was still there, but when she checked her email, the message from future self was gone. Except, not completely gone. There was a new message. Just one line. "Nice work. Enjoy the rest of your life. It gets interesting. P.S. Still don't eat the cafeteria sushi. I'm a quantum anomaly," Maya said. "I exist because I fixed a problem that now never happened, which means I'm sort of outside the normal timeline. Future me explained it in this chair. Well, in the email that doesn't exist anymore." "So you're a walking temporal paradox," Kilnex said. "Basically, that's going to make the paperwork extremely complicated." "Sorry about that," Kilnex waved a claw dismissively. "Don't be. This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in 600 years. I was getting bored with careful, methodical archaeology anyway." Over the next few weeks, the academic community processed the changes. The Forgotten Ones became a footnote, a brief period of confused data that was later corrected. The Architects became the new focus of study, and Professor Kilnex found himself leading the most exciting research project in the galaxy. Maya finished her studies at the Institute with top honors. Her thesis on practical applications of quantum temporal mechanics won 3 prestigious awards. Nobody mentioned that she'd learned the material by fixing a paradox that technically never happened. On her last day at the Institute, Maya found Kilnex in his office, surrounded by data on the Architects. His tail was twitching with excitement as he analyzed their technology. "I wanted to thank you," Maya said, "for helping me fix things. You didn't have to." Kilnex looked up, his 3 eyes focusing on her in sequence. "You showed me that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than even I suspected. That's worth more than any career built on certainties. Besides," his middle eye twitched, "I may have made backup copies of the Forgotten Ones' data before it changed, for personal research purposes. That's not against any regulations, is it?" Maya grinned. "I have no idea, but if it is, I definitely didn't hear you say that." "Good. Because between you and me, I'm curious about how you managed to scatter objects across 300 planets using nothing but graduate-level quantum mechanics and determination." "That's impressive. even if it was an accident. Maybe I'll figure it out someday. Carefully. With proper safety protocols, please do. And if you accidentally break causality again, I'd appreciate a heads up before the universe tries to compensate. Maya left the institute that afternoon on a transport ship heading back to Earth. She watched the station shrink behind her, thinking about impossible things and closed time loops and the strange fact that she'd saved her entire species by talking to herself. Her datapad chimed. Another email. Sender unknown. By the way, when you get home, check your closet. You'll find a box of stuff that mysteriously reappeared, including that hoodie you thought you lost in Cancun. You're welcome. Also, you might want to look into studying the architects. Trust me on this one. There's something nobody else has noticed yet about their technology and you're the only one who can figure it out. But that's a problem for future you. Present you should probably just get some sleep. You've earned it. Maya smiled, closed the email and watched the stars stream past the viewport. Somewhere out there, future her was presumably still sending helpful messages backward through time. Somewhere in the past her was successfully running a quantum archaeology program with corrected equations. And somewhere in the present she was a walking temporal paradox heading home after the strangest semester any student had ever experienced. Reality, she decided, was extremely weird. But she was starting to appreciate that, and she definitely wasn't going to eat the cafeteria sushi on Thursday.